a shout out to our friends at Beatles where they stream live Beatles music 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. That's Beatles for all of your Beatles music needs.
It's the Beatles from the beginning to the end. It's their solo careers. It's their humor. It's their incredible music. It's the British invasion. It's their American adversaries. It's an historical musical education. It's the Beatles and a whole lot more. A Beatles fan's paradise. It's BeatlesArama.com. Tune in. You'll love it.
Welcome to Tomorrow Never Knows with me, Bob Wilson, Warren Brown, our Minister of Art, and author Phil Weathers. Today we welcome an extra special guest, Bruce Spizer, into the Beatles Kingdom. Bruce will discuss his work and especially his extraordinary new book, The Beatles Finally Let It Be. We begin with a shout out to our friends at Beatles streams free on the web 24 hours a day. And how many days a week, guys?
8
days a week.
8 days a week. So we got that one covered. And we also want to give a shout out to a great event that's happening on October 9th. Warren, do you know what's happening on October 9th?
I believe so. That happens to be John Lennon's birthday, and we spoke to a very nice man. His name is Charles Rosenet, and I'll let you take it from there.
Well, Phil, do you know that the intricacies of this event by Charles Rosenet?
Well, I know it's called Remember Lennon, Imagine
We forgot
80.
Lennon for a second. It's Remember Lennon, Imagine 80, Friday, yes. October 9th, 2020. And all you have to do is go to www.rememberlennon.com, and it's going to be a live stream. So if COVID's keeping you inside, this is going to be a lot of fun coming to your home to celebrate the birthday of John Lennon. And not just any birthday, but the 80th birthday. So thanks, Charles Rosenet. Bruce, you give us a wonderful book. It's far from the normal books that are out there. We see many of them because we do a Beatles show, or at least we try to. We do our best. And it's way better than anything else out there. So what inspired you to cover all things Let It Be at this point in time?
Well, I started something called the album series. Sgt. Pepper was the first book in that series. And then, of course, people said, well, you have to do one for the White Album. And since it was my favorite album, I agreed. And then, obviously, Abbey Road. And so when I heard that there was going to be this wonderful Peter Jackson film, The Beatles Get Back, and it was going to come out in September of 2020, I thought, well, I should get a book out at that same time. And so I worked hard on the book and had some people make their usual contributions, and the book was ready to rock and roll, sign contracts, and then all of a sudden an announcement came out and Disney said, oh, nope, the film's not coming out to August of the next year. And I thought, well, I've already got this book, so I'm going to go ahead and put it out. And I'm glad that I made that decision. I got a lot of email from people saying, are you going to cancel the book? And I said, no, I'm not. I'm going to go forward with it. And they were, oh, that's good. That'll soften the blow a little bit. It'll give us something to do for a year. So I think it really was the right choice to go forward with the book. And as I've told people, when the publicity gears up next August, I'll get 2 bites at the apple. So why not?
2 bites at the apple. I like that. That was clever.
I like
hey,
that too.
Either of you guys who are on camera have the book handy?
I do.
Get this out of it yet. Oh, you have it right there.
I can show it right there.
The Beatles Finally Let It Be, compiled by Bruce Spizer. That is such a cool cover. You want to flip it open and show how intricate some of the photography is, some of the reproductions. It's really high quality and high paper printing.
Yeah, we'll try to show some of that. Just like it uses a lot of the visuals that you see. And the idea behind the book, when I did the books originally, the idea was I wanted to do a book.
You're going to show us one picture?
Well, I can show you more than that.
Come on, let's show it off. You got some awesome pictures in there. The text is excellent. I'd buy it just for the text or the picture.
I'm going to show you one thing that I really like, and this is a newspaper clipping that was in the Evening Standard on a certain day we all remember. And the headline was, Police Stop Beatles Making a Din. Now, how English is that? And basically it was, an article on the concert itself, and I thought that was a lot of fun. But we also have, certain things such as John and Yoko being interviewed by a gentleman who actually was the man responsible, we believe, for the bootlegs initially. So there are a lot of fun things in the book. And the premise behind these books is I like to do it from a historical standpoint. How, what was going on in America regarding the album, what was going on in the UK, what was going on in Canada. Pierce Hemmings contributes that chapter. Al Sussman writes about what was going on in the world. Frank Daniel, what was going on in film and music. We also have a section on recording sessions. And the really fun section is what we call fan recollections, where people just write in and tell me, their recollections of first seeing the film Let It Be, or first hearing the album, or first hearing a bootleg. In this time, it was special because the first 3 fan recollections were for people that were up on the roof. And that would be Ken Mansfield, Kevin Harrington, who held the lyrics for John on Dig a Pony, and Chris O'Dell. And then in addition to that, the 4th one is from a woman who happened to be walking her dog and stopped and heard the concert. So we got 4 different perspectives of people who actually heard that concert, and that was kind of special. So, it's a fun book to put together.
It's a very fun book to read. And I think the ultimate fan recollection in there may be your own. Now, as a youngster, you bought a very special copy of the Let It Be release in England when you went over to England. Could you tell us about your vacation over there and what happened and how you ended up with a really rare pressing and copy of the Let It Be album?
Yeah, that's an incredible, lucky break for me. My parents and I were going to Africa for a medical seminar for my dad, and we had a 6-hour layover in London. So my dad said, let's see if we can get a cabbie to take us into town and show us the sights. And I said, I want to go by Carnaby Street, and I want to go to a record store. I wanted to get the Let It Be album because I knew from reading Rolling Stone, it came in the UK with a special book. And so we went into the record store, and my parents said, Bruce, it's expensive. It's £3, and it probably weighs £3, and you're going to have to lug that throughout Africa for a couple of weeks. And I said, I want it. My birthday's coming up. I want it. And they said, okay, fine. And so I had the album. I played it only a handful of times because I had the U.S. pressing. Went through the book. Of course, it fell apart like all the books. And years later, I'm at a Beatles convention, and I was just talking to someone, and I said, yeah, I got Let It Be in London, and it was on the Parlophone label. And everyone said, no, it was on the Apple label when it first came out. You must have switched it with a reissue over the years. And I said, no way. So one of the dealers, Jim Henson, said, go home, look at the prefix number, and give me a call. So when I got home, I looked at it, and the prefix started out with 2 P's rather than 1. I called up Jim, and he said, Bruce, you have the rare export edition of that album, and it's worth about $2,000.
Wow.
So pure luck. And of course, I told my parents that, and they said, okay, £3 to $2,000. That's a pretty good investment. Are you going to sell it? I said, of course not. I lugged it across Africa for a couple of weeks. I can't sell it.
Now, do you have is that copy within walking distance there in your abode? Can you show us that?
Boy, it would be hard for me to get to. So, but suffice to say, it is the boxed edition, and it does have the Parlophone label. And in the book, I actually show that. Maybe I can flip to that image real quick and show it that's the label itself right there, and that's the rare export edition. Pure luck that I got it.
Well, that was, if anybody deserves that luck, it's you, because you do some great books and do a lot for the fans. Now, Let It Be took some turns as it was becoming its final product, to say the least. And as I was looking through your book, it was talking about people thought there was going to be a live show, a TV show, a movie. And in the midst of this, they're recording Abbey Road, but I don't want to take you off track. But can you talk a bit about all that? Like, you're a fan, you're looking in Rolling Stone, you're looking in the magazines, and this project is developing. How old were you at this point?
Well, I would have been, I guess I would have been a teenager around about 15 at the time, yeah. And what I remember, first of all, I'll say what went on in the UK, and then I'll get to what I remember. In the UK, in September, the Beatles had done these promos for Hey Jude and Revolution, and Paul was so invigorated by performing, even though it was just a vocal, the vocals over recorded music, to a live audience at Twickenham Studios, that he got the idea of, the Beatles should perform live again. And so the British magazines were actually reporting, Beatles to do live concert, ? And the thought was that the Beatles would do this at the Royal Albert Hall. And what they would do is they would play songs from their new album, which would be the White Album, and maybe some rock and roll oldies thrown in. And then the British press said, well, no, it's not going to be at the Royal Albert Hall. It's going to be at the Roundhouse. And, and so once again, these were the ideas coming out. And so the project was moving in that direction. And then they needed to take some time off because George, after the White Album was done, went to the States to work with Jackie Lomax. So you now had a time where, okay, we're going to get together again. Where are we going to get together for these rehearsals for this live show we're going to do? Well, Ringo was going to be in the Magic Christian. And the Magic Christian was going to be filmed at Twickenham Studios starting in February. So the idea was, well, why don't we do it at the soundstage at Twickenham and do that during the month of January? And then all of a sudden the idea was, look, rather than doing songs from the White Album, why don't we learn about 6, 7, 8 new songs, and we'll do those during the show and mix in those with some oldies. So it kept morphing into different things. The venue kept changing. There were crazy ideas. Let's go to a Roman amphitheater in Tripoli and things like that. But one of the problems with it all was George was not sold on the concept of doing a live show. He was fine with, let's do a new album, let's rehearse for it. And eventually that, among other factors, led for George to quit. So in the U.S. press, where we first learned out about this thing was TV Guide. There was an issue of TV Guide that showed 4 cats on a hot roof, and there they are playing. And this is going to be for a TV special. Hey, that's really great. We learned about that. Then Rolling Stone that summer and the British press that summer actually reported about, the album itself and what would be on it. It would be called The Beatles Get Back. And it was going to have these different songs. And they even described the songs. By then, all we had heard was Get Back and Don't Let Me Down. Then all of a sudden that gets delayed. No, it's not coming out in the summer. It's going to come out in August. And then all of a sudden, well, now there's going to be a new album coming out, and it'll be coming out in November. And then it'll be coming out in time for Christmas. And then it'll be coming out in January. And then it'll be coming out in March. And you get the idea. And the joke was, its delay kept getting pushed back. And then Alan Klein got involved, and his idea was, look, why waste this on a TV show? Let's make this a movie, and we can make money for a long time. Plus, we owe United Artists a movie. Many people believe Yellow Submarine was movie number 3 for UA. It was not. UA refused. They said, we'll distribute it, but it's not movie number 3. Let it be as movie number 3. We could spend 20 minutes on that, but we won't. People can read about it in the book because I know you guys have other questions you want to ask me. But I do remember reading in Rolling Stone, they said, Paul's coming out with a new album, and we don't think that'll come out till after the Beatles album, which will come out in, April or May. And they said, however, Apple did not say April or May of which year. And that pretty much summed up what we thought.
Now, in your book, I just want to show the printing off one more time. On page 134, could you show us a few of the lobby cards so the fans know?
Yeah. Let me flip to that. Absolutely.
Getting the originals would be pretty hard for most of us, but if they have your book, it's like having the lobby cards beautifully reproduced with really nice printing.
I like this one because George has a big smile on his face. And when George, although he hated these sessions at Twickenham, when the Beatles got back together, he really enjoyed it. And, another fun shot, not a lobby card, but a production still of the film. And there's John on the rooftop, and he's got a big grin on his face as well. Ringo's the only one who looks sour in every picture for some reason. I don't know why. But he looks sour in just about everything. And this picture I like because it shows that there were tense times as well. It wasn't all fun and games. But they, of course, made some incredible recordings. No doubt about it.
Now, let's go over to the weather's report. Phil, are you ready?
I'm ready. Bruce,
right.
it's nice.
Go ahead.
Bruce, it's nice to speak to you this morning.
Thank you.
I believe you saw Let It Be, the movie, in person, and an interesting part of your work is the reaction of the fans, who I would call the fifth Beatle. Tell us about your fan reaction to seeing the film in person, if you would.
I went in knowing that the Beatles had broken up, so that made it a little tough in that regard. And the film opened up, and it was kind of, in a way, a little bit sad and somber. And you see Paul get into this discussion with George, which was really a fight. you see another time where Paul is talking and John's, you can visualize John's eyes rolling in his head during it and things of that nature. And I really wasn't enjoying the film that much. And there was Yoko seemed to be there all the time. And why was she there? I thought there were just four Beatles. You know, what was that about? Yeah, she was on that picture sleeve, but now she's just there the whole time. And then all of a sudden, we see George walking in front of Apple and we hear For You Blue. And the film all of a sudden shifts in mood. And then all of a sudden, Billy Preston's there. You know, and then for me, the segment before the rooftop was so exciting because I loved the song Long and Winding Road. Haven't heard it on the bootleg. We'll get into that later in the show. And on the album, I was horrified with what I heard with the strings and the harp. And here in the film is Let It Be the way I always wanted to hear it again. And then they go up to the rooftop. And although we had seen the Get Back video, you know, that was on Glenn Campbell's show one time. And, you know, it wasn't like I could go to the store and buy the video and never see it again. And it was so great seeing the Beatles performing Get Back again on the rooftop. And the whole concert was so much fun. And, you know, and John's, of course, classic thing at the end. And Paul's ad-lib about, you know, about dancing on the rooftop and your mama don't like that, she's going to have you arrested. I mean, the whole thing, you know, I walked out the theater in a wonderful mood. And it, you know, before the rooftop, I probably would have walked out depressed. So I'm really glad they got the idea to do that rooftop concert. So, you know, and, you know, I went with some friends of mine who were Beatle fans, you know, high school buddies, and we all felt the same way. We noticed the theater wasn't all that crowded, and that was a bit of a surprise to us. So it wasn't like people mobbed to see Let It Be. And my book showed that that was the case, not only from fan recollections, from a wonderful author, Jude Sutherland Kessler, who said they counted the people walking in. There were like a dozen. So, I mean, wow. You know, it was really, really crazy in that regard.
Bob mentioned a little bit about Peter Jackson's film that's been delayed. What are your thoughts about that? And have you heard really any comments or remarks? Is the take on the film going to be more positive, upbeat? What have you heard about it?
Yeah, I expect it to be more upbeat. And I always said, from hearing all the Get Back tapes, if you had given me that film, I could have edited a film that would have been upbeat. But Michael Lindsay Hogg, that wasn't what he was going for. He was going for, something different. And right. I think Peter Jackson's film will not be a whitewash, but I do think it will be more upbeat. I think it will look better, for one thing. Look, if a guy can take out of sync, black and white, grainy World War I footage and make that a spectacular color film, imagine what he can do with something from 50 years ago. So I think the film is going to look fabulous.
Right.
I'm really looking forward to seeing it.
Yeah. Well, this is your yeah. This is your fourth installment in your album series. Can you speak a little bit to those books? I know you've mentioned that, and the team that you assembled to help you.
Yeah.
Okay.
The way the genesis of the whole thing was that I had written an essay for Sgt. Pepper. And I really liked the essay, but I was concerned that if I gave it to anybody, it was going to get edited because it was too long. And as much as I love Beatle Fan wasn't going to have color pictures to go along with it or anything like that. And so I thought maybe I'll put out my own magazine. And I thought, well, that's kind of silly. I'm good at putting out books. So I'll put out my own book. And I thought, well, I don't have time to do a full book on Sgt. Pepper. But the amazing thing about Sgt. Pepper was the way that it touched everybody and people reacted to it. And I thought, well, I'll do it from a historical standpoint, but an important part of the book is going to be fan recollections. And that was, from the get-go, I had that idea. My graphic designer, Dinah Thornton, who's been with me from day one, said, look, Bruce, let's make this book look different. Why don't we make it the shape of a record album? Okay, great idea. So we thought, what size? Well, 12 by 12 is too big. Why not 9 by 9? So we picked 9 by 9, and that was done. And then I thought, I can't get this done in time. I'm going to need some help. And I thought, well, Al Sussman, I've read much of his stuff in Beatle Fan and books that he's written. He's really good about capturing the mood of the 60s. And then I thought Frank Daniels would be good for the music and Beatles influences. I wanted to cover Canada, so Piers Hemmingson was my obvious choice. And then I thought Bill King used to always write these fan note pieces, and those were really well done. So I'd get Bill King. So I had my team, and I thought, and now I just need to get someone from England. And everyone I knew in England, it was either they couldn't do it because of scheduling, or they couldn't do it because they worked for a record company, or they couldn't do it because they weren't alive at the time. And I thought, okay, I'm a historian. I'll write it from the British perspective as well.
Right.
So that's how the concept started. And when I did this book, I had a feeling in the back of my mind it would not be a one-shot book, although it started that way. And of course, the White Album being my favorite album, there never was any doubt as to whether I would do a White Album book. I love Abbey Road, no doubt there. And of course, I had to finish the first part of the series with it. The title, The Beatles Finally Let It Be, of course, was quite ironic because the film kept being delayed, and finally it got released as Let It Be. So to me, that was the natural title. And, what was the number one question Apple was always being asked? When is, Let It Be going to come out on video again, So
Right.
I thought the title was ironic and a lot of fun, just like the Beatles Get Back to Abbey Road was a bit of a pun as well. So I had a lot of fun putting this one together, and as usual, great work by my graphic designer, Diana Thornton, and great contributions by the whole gang.
Sounds like a great team, a good team that you've assembled. Before I turn it over to Warren, Bruce, I'm going to give you credit for something. You introduced me to a band I had never heard of from your book, The Beatles Are Coming, the Briarwood Singers.
Yes.
Opened for the Beatles at Carnegie Hall. Well, I ended up finding out that Stan Beach, who is a member of the Briarwood Singers, actually lives about an hour from me.
Oh, my.
So I've actually talked to him and met him, and he has shared that story with me about opening for the Beatles, which is very interesting. And I'd never heard of that group until I read your book. So
thank you.
That's really neat. All right, Warren, I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right, thank you, Phil. I appreciate that. First, Bruce, we have a mutual friend who is also our sponsor, and he would like for me to say hi to you, and that's Pat Matthews.
By all means, tell Pat hello from me. Pat and I grew up in New Orleans, and Pat wrote a fan recollection for the book about his Let It Be story. So it's only fitting that we pay a tribute to Pat.
That's good. He's been a good sponsor to us also. I appreciate that, and I will pass the message on. I got one thing to say. I think your book is amazing. I think it's the best book that I've ever seen, Beatles book that I've ever seen out there to date. It's awesome. I really would like everyone to purchase this book. You will not regret it at all. It's worth the price.
Well, thank you so much. We try to, do the high standard that the Beatles have done by giving people good value for their money. And my website's Beatle.net, very simple. And we do appreciate those direct sales, because without those direct sales, I could not, afford to do these books, because you don't make enough by the time the middleman gets their cut.
That's very true. The Beatles gave up on a live show in a regular theater. How did they wind up on the roof? And were the cuts recorded on the roof on the album?
Well, that's the interesting thing about it. George was the one that was adamant about not wanting to do a live concert. And the film's producer, Michael Lindsay Hogg, was concerned that there was no payoff. Here are the Beatles rehearsing. The payoff is they're going to do a concert. Now, because of George, there's no payoff. The story goes that Ringo was talking about, they were thinking of putting a garden up on their roof. And he said, well, let's go up there. And when he was up there, he got the idea of, you could set up the band here, and the Beatles would be playing to all of London. How cool would that be? And so, he was largely responsible for that. There were some issues, of course. It was cold. What would have happened if it had rained? Fortunately, it didn't rain. It was windy up there. And so for some of the microphones that they used for the amplifiers, not the vocal mics, but for the amplifier ones, they needed some sort of windscreen. and they didn't really have any. So basically, they used pantyhose for the windscreen. And if you look at the pictures closely, you will see that that's pantyhose. I've had women tell me that. I wouldn't know what pantyhose looks like on a microphone. I'm not into those weird things. But anyway.
That's interesting because I never noticed.
Yeah. So you'll see it not on the vocal mics, but on the mics for the amps.
Right.
And the other interesting thing about it was that, this was properly recorded. And, you had George Martin downstairs in the Apple basement, and it was going to be possibly used, depending on how good the takes were. And on the original Get Back that Glenn Johns had thrown together, One After 909 from the Rooftop was used, but that was it. Phil Spector, when he was brought in, look, I can almost forgive Phil Spector for what he did for The Long and Winding Road, for his choosing Rooftop Concerts, for Dig a Pony, I've Got a Feeling, So you had in that sense that here he is going in and picking some of those Rooftop songs. And that was really a good move on Spector's part. So, yes, it was used and used very successfully. And if you think about it, Glenn Johns, I think, on what he put together, made the mistake of taking stuff that was fun, but not necessarily, to the point of where it was a solid performance. For example, I've Got a Feeling on the, Glenn Johns version of the album. John has feedback and he says, too loud, so he stopped. And the best part of the song, which was John and Paul singing against each other, is gone. Whereas Phil, went ahead and picked the Rooftop Concert. So bear in mind, the Rooftop Concerts really should be the best performances of these songs because they've been rehearsing them all these days. So, of course, something from January 30 is going to sound better than something from January 23rd. Right. So I hope I've answered your question.
You did, and you also went into my next question about Glenn Johns and Phil Spector. Can you go into a little bit on what George Martin had to do on his part?
Okay, well, the whole thing is very complex because, Paul McCartney brings in Glenn Johns to be a balance engineer for this project, and he's at the rehearsals. George Martin is not at a lot of the rehearsals at Twickenham, although he is at some. When they switched to Apple to record, George Martin is there most but not all of the time, and George Martin, borrowed from EMI the equipment they would need. That's another long story I don't have time for. But you do have Glenn Johns, who's the balance engineer, actually at sometimes acting as the de facto producer of the Beatles. And he was taking some of the tapes and going over to Olympic Studios and mixing them, and just got this idea of, gee, wouldn't it be fun to have the Beatles, warts and all, with their socks off, and it would make this fantastic album. He presented the idea to the Beatles, gave them some acetates, and the Beatles didn't like the idea at the time because it was so different from their polished albums that they just couldn't buy into the concept. So the idea was that the Beatles had at least a half a dozen or so songs done from the sessions. And then when they had breaks from Ringo being on the Magic Christian or Glenn Johns being back from producing the Steve Miller Band in early February in the States, they would get back together again and start working on those songs again. So a song like I Want You was actually rehearsed at Apple. And then they started doing, we'll record, I Want You, in the studios again. And so the idea was that they were going to flesh out the recordings that they had done at Apple and make it a single album. And then they realized, maybe what we really should do is do a nice polished album like, we've done before, and we'll get Glenn Johns to put together this Get Back album from what we did at Apple, not at Twickenham, because those were not properly recorded on stereo tape, or tape that could be used for stereo. They were not on an 8-track like the Apple stuff was. And so Glenn Johns put together an album. The Beatles were involved in it. George Martin was involved in it. And the Beatles weren't completely sold on the idea. I think that if they had been completely sold on it, maybe it would have come out. But the idea was, we can't put this out as a standalone album. We can put it out with the TV show. And when the TV show kept getting delayed, that meant the album would be delayed. And when Phil Spector delayed it when Alan Klein delayed it even more by turning it into a movie, then that meant it would be delayed again. And Glenn Johns was asked to, look, the album you did's fine, but it doesn't tie in enough with the movie because we need I Me Mine in it. And the Beatles never properly recorded it because John and Yoko do a waltz to it. So the Beatles actually were brought in to record, only John was out of town. So the Three Tools did I Me Mine in early January 1970 with George Martin at the helm. And then also Across the Universe was in the film, and so they wanted to put Across the Universe on it. So Glenn Johns took a version of Across the Universe, got rid of the bird sounds on it, and that was used. So there was a second version of the Get Back album, and, well, the honest thing about it was the Beatles weren't completely sold on it, but even more important, Alan Klein was definitely not sold on it. Abbey Road had come out. It was this wonderful, polished album. And how do you follow that up with this, this rough album? And so his idea was he wanted to get Phil Spector in to do it. And all he had to do was kind of trick John into wanting to do it and thinking it was his idea. George went along with it because John and George idolized Phil Spector. Spector had done a great job with Instant Karma, so why not Phil Spector? And so Phil was brought in, started doing the mixing, and Phil felt that Ringo's drumming on some of the tracks, you couldn't hear it well enough, so let's bring Ringo in. And then, the Long and Winding Road, the version he picked, John's bass playing's bad on it, and there is no instrumental break in it. Paul's singing again, and it needs that instrumental break because Billy Preston wasn't there that day. Phil could have taken a version from January 31, and that'd have been fine, but he didn't, and he brought in the orchestra. He used the orchestra for I Me Mine, which was not offensive, but wasn't necessary. He used it on Long and Winding Road, which once again was not needed. And he did not re-record anything for Let It Be, but everyone thought he did because it sounded totally different. What he did was he took what George Martin had done with those strings and with the brass and brought it to the forefront. And he also used a different guitar solo. George had done a raunchy solo later on, and George Martin had his choice of which solo to use. And he went with the more laid-back solo, thinking the raunchy one was out of place. And then Phil Spector thought, well, I'll use that solo. And the problem with the song is by the end of the song, Paul's voice is competing with George's guitar too far to the front, the brass too far to the front, and the strings too far to the front. So needless to say, I did not like that about it.
Right.
What do I think about the different albums? I think that Glenn Johns, there are a lot of stuff on it I love that he did. Same thing with Spector. A lot of the stuff, Two of Us sounds great on it. But I don't think either quite got it right. What do I think about Let It Be Naked? I don't think that got it right either. It sounded spectacular, but by not having the talking between the songs and the things, it lost the soul of Let It Be. I don't know if the Beatles have ever put together a proper Let It Be album. And I don't know if we'll ever hear a perfect Let It Be album. It might be a case if you're going to have to do it on your own by taking different ones from different versions of it and putting together in your mind the ultimate one. I did that, and I quite enjoy it. But, and also don't forget Anthology. Anthology had tons of tracks from the Get Back Let It Be sessions. So it's right. The most, and you always say, how did they get there? I mean, that Long and Winding Road started in September of 1968, and ends in 1970 with that. So it's amazing, all of it, and it is a fascinating story, which why I knew it would make a fun book to do, and I knew I'd need probably an extra 16 pages, which I did.
You probably needed a lot more than that.
Yeah.
A lot of different moving parts there, that's for sure. Can you tell us a little more about the bootlegs and what became of the Let It Be album? How did they differ from the official release, and which versions do you prefer?
Yeah, the bootlegs was an interesting story because, I remember hearing, for me personally, I first heard the bootlegs on Christmas Eve. There was a radio station, Spanish station during the day that went hippie at night. And they started playing these Let It Be tracks. And, and I had no idea where they came from, but it was a great thing to hear them. And the short story is what we think happened was that there was a Canadian journalist, Richie York, actually Australian, living in Canada, and he went over to London to interview George Harrison. And while he was at Apple and, just getting the lay of the land before interviewing George, he dropped by to say hello to John and Yoko because he had seen them before. And while he was in their office, John gets a phone call from some guy in Canada who wants to talk to him about coming over and seeing this rock and roll festival in Toronto. And basically, John asked Richie York, is this guy legit? And Richie says, yeah, he's fine. And so John gets the idea to not only go to the show, but to play at the show with the Plastic Ono Band. In the meantime, Richie's still in Canada, in London. John comes back from the show, invigorated, thinking it was so much fun. And basically, we believe at that time, John gives Richie an acetate that John had gotten, that Glenn Johns had put together. Not the, the actual Get Back album that it would be later, but some rough mixes of it. And so John doesn't realize what might happen with it. Well, Richie gets back to Canada, and apparently Richie makes a tape of it, but in doing so screws up and only gets one channel. And so the one channel of that is available, and a Canadian station gets it, and they put it on the air, and they, we believe, sell it to 2 other Canadian stations, and they get it. And then some guy in Canada tapes it off the air and sells it to a station in Buffalo, New York for $100, and they air it. And then it really gets fun because there's a disc jockey who is in Boston who has high quality tapes of the songs, not the final album, but some of these songs. And he goes ahead and thinks, well, if it's already on the air, then I'll go ahead and play it. And he plays it. So now you've got 2 different versions of Get Back songs being played in the New England area. And they're being taped by people. And all of a sudden, some bootlegs start coming out. And that's when the fun begins. And the first real bootleg, first Get Back bootleg, and it's actually called Comeback. And that comes out in December of 1969. And that is when the fun begins, because other bootlegs come out later from different sources in different quality. But, to me, I think, I really enjoyed, because I made a cassette tape of that radio broadcast. So I had a cassette tape of what was going on. And I don't know if your readers, listeners, and podcast people remember tape, but here's mine. It was a realistic tape, and there it is. And I wrote on it, the Beatles Get Back. So that's a tape, like a cassette of what I would have done. Right. And I got to listen to it for a long time, and I really liked the songs. The quality wasn't that great. And when Phil Spector's album came out, the first thing I heard was the single, on the radio, when I heard Long and Winding Road, and I nearly threw up. I was so disgusted by it. When I bought the album and heard the I Dig a Pygmy and then that, Ringo's snare drum in 2 of Us, it was, my God, this is great. So look, Spector did some great things on that album. Rather than using a mid-tempo plodding version of 2 of Us that was used by Glenn Johns, he took the only real upbeat version the Beatles ever recorded, and that is, in my mind, the best version. But the bootlegs are an important part of the story, and I was really very fortunate to get Scott Belmer, known as Belmo, to write a chapter on the bootlegs, and Scott and I worked on the chapter, and I think it came out really great, and tip of the hat, which I'm not wearing, to Scott for an excellent job. I think that's one of the highlights of the book is an overview. Can you imagine how hard it is to do a 6-page overview of all the Beatles bootlegs to deal with Get Back? So tip of the hat to Belmo.
Yeah, that's awesome, and I thank you for that answer. We're now getting to the segment which the Bulldog, Bob, likes to call my one more question segment because every time I ask questions, I always come up with an extra question. So here's my extra question. Yoko Ono is having health problems at the current time, and our prayers are with her. How was Yoko during these sessions, and was she well received?
It's an interesting thing, I know when I saw Yoko there, to me it was kind of curious. Why is she there? This is a film about the Beatles, yet Yoko seems to be sometimes there more often than the other Beatles, and that to me seemed a little bit off. And later, of course, I learned Yoko was with John all the time for the for the White Album sessions and for Abbey Road. So
Hmm.
it was natural for Yoko to be there. George, in particular, resented it, not so much for just Yoko being there, but John at the time was a lot of times strung out on heroin, and Yoko would talk for John. And George hated that because he wanted what did John think, not what Yoko thought John thought. It did
Hmm.
cause tension, no doubt. The interesting thing, though, later on, I got the press kit that United Artists did, and I was hoping to put it in the book, and there just wasn't space. And in the press kit, they talk about Yoko Ono. And like, this is, the Beatles and John Lennon's avant-garde Japanese girlfriend, Yoko Ono. And they're actually in one of the UA press kits, they're really focusing on Yoko like it's an important part of the film. So I found that interesting that United Artists, someone at UA just thought we need to make Yoko Ono part of this press kit. They did, and I found it fascinating from a historical standpoint.
Wow, great answer, and thank you very much. And it's all yours, Bulldog. Thank you.
Well, could you hold up that swell book cover for us again?
Yes, I can.
It's the Beatles Finally Let It Be with the awesome cover. And I know a lot of us never got the booklet. And I felt when I got a copy of this book from the author that I finally made up for not having that original booklet, that this was even better. And where can people go to follow you online and to find your books and pick them up?
It's going to be www.beatle, beatle.net, N-E-T, so no S on Beatles, just beatle.net. And of course, they can order the books, and the books, the album series have a collector's edition, which has also great extras. For this one, it comes in a black slipcase with the cover of the book. It has a poster which has all of the lobby cards and the press stills, and in addition to that, a bookmark, of course, and a wonderful drawing that Eric Cash did, an illustration of the Rooftop Concert from a perspective. Imagine if there was a drone in 1970 that flew over and took a picture of that Rooftop Concert. So you get to see, Billy Preston, you get to see all of the Beatles, you get to see the Chimney Gang, Ken Mansfield and Maureen and Chris O'Dell and Yoko. And it's really an excellent drawing, and it's a fun thing. So my thanks to Eric for doing that. And of course, if you like the album series books, get them all. We have copies of all of them, and you can try Let It Be, and if you like it, but or even get bold and say, well, I'll get back and Let It Be at the same time, or get all of them at the same time. We'll be happy to pack them up in nice sturdy boxes and send them your way.
Well, that sounds like a plan. And can I invite you on October 9th, this October 9th upcoming? Our friend Charles Rosenet is going to have a concert stream of Remember Lennon Imagine 80. It's at www.rememberlennon.com. If we can sneak you in the door, because we know the promoter, do you want to come and check it out?
Absolutely. And Charles is a good friend of mine as well. Charles has allowed me, when I was in Liverpool the same time on his tour, he would let me sneak on the bus and tell a story or two to the people. And through Charles, I got to actually go to some of the places I probably would not have been able to go to. So I consider Charles a really good friend. And for those who haven't been on his tours, when he's able to start them up again, by all means do so.
Well, we welcome you to that, and we'll try to get Charles to contact you with a way to see that show. And we got to ask you, we have a tradition at the end of the show. We usually sing the snippet song, The End, at the end of Abbey Road, almost to have Her Majesty in there. Would you sing that with us?
Yeah, I'll be happy to.
All right. So let me know when you guys are ready. A 1 and a 2. And in the end,
Da-da-dun, da-da-dun, the love you take
is equal to
The love you make.
boom, doo-doo-doo-doo-doo.
All right. I thank you,
very
Bruce.
good, very good.
we'd like to thank you on behalf of the group and ourselves, and we hope we pass the audition.
You did, fellas.
All right.
Back at
Thank you, Bruce, and thank you for accepting to come on the show. And I got one thing to tell you from Pat. He just messaged me. He says he's scheduling you for a spot on his Beatles-orama TV show,
Oh, great.
and he wants to do it during the Saints game.
Pat knows better than that. That's great.
That's the reason why he told me to ask.
Yes,
Anyway.
I know.
All right, Bob, go ahead.
All right, so that was quote unquote the end, and thanks for being on. That was a lot of fun. It's a great book. It comes out at a great time with that Peter Jackson documentary coming out again. It's been a pleasure to talk to you, and you really know your stuff.
Thanks, guys. I'd love to come back anytime you all want me. There are many things Beatles I can talk about, and it's always fun talking Beatles with people who know Beatles.
Anytime at all, you're welcome back.
Thanks so much.
Thank
All I got to do is call.